Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer. And before you click away, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that the change jangling around in your pocket right now, the coins you barely glance at before handing them to a cashier, could secretly be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? What if one single penny, overlooked and ordinary, could be hiding a value so staggering that it could buy you a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and set up your entire family for generations? Well, hold on to your seats, because today we're diving deep into the world of the 1972 Lincoln Penny, a coin so unbelievably valuable that its worth has been estimated at a mind-blowing $487 million. Yes, you heard that right. $487 million for a single 1-cent coin. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? How can something that was meant to buy you a piece of candy back in the day now be worth nearly $500 million? The answer lies in a fascinating combination of minting errors, historical significance, extreme rarity, and the insatiable hunger of collectors worldwide who would do anything to get their hands on this legendary piece of American numismatic history. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This 1972 penny isn't just some dusty museum piece locked away in a vault somewhere. No, there's a real possibility that one of these coins could still be out there, hiding in an old jar, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, or even circulating in everyday transactions, just waiting to be discovered by someone lucky enough to know what they're looking at. And before we go any further, let me tell you something. If you think this coin is incredible, just wait until you hear about the others we have lined up for you today, because we've got a lineup of Lincoln pennies that will absolutely blow your mind, coins worth hundreds of millions, coins with stories so wild they sound like fiction, and coins that could literally be sitting in your collection right now without you even knowing it. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because what's coming will leave you speechless, and trust me, you do not want to miss what we reveal about the coins coming up next. Now, let's dive into the extraordinary world of the 1972 Lincoln Penny and uncover exactly why this particular coin has reached such an astronomical value. The year 1972 was a significant time in American history. The Vietnam War was winding down. The Watergate scandal was just beginning to brew. Richard Nixon was president, and the United States Mint was churning out billions of pennies to keep up with the country's economic demands. The Denver and Philadelphia mints were working overtime, producing Lincoln cents by the millions each day, and on the surface, there was nothing particularly special about these coins. They featured the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, which had been the standard design since 1959. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Somewhere in the chaos of mass production, something went terribly, wonderfully wrong. During the minting process at one of these facilities, a series of catastrophic errors occurred that would create what numismatists now call the Holy Grail of modern American coinage. We're talking about coins struck on the wrong planchet, double die obverse so dramatic you can see them with the naked eye, off-center strikes that somehow made it past quality control, and in the rarest cases, coins that combine multiple errors into one single, perfect storm of numismatic anomaly. The 1972 double die obverse penny, in particular, shows incredible doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the phrase "In God we trust." And I'm not talking about subtle doubling that you need a magnifying glass to see. I'm talking about doubling so pronounced that it looks like the coin was struck twice with the die slightly shifted, creating a ghostly shadow effect that's absolutely mesmerizing when you see it in person. But what makes the $487 million valuation even more astounding is the condition factor. You see, most 1972 pennies that were produced went straight into circulation where they were handled, dropped, scratched, and worn down by countless transactions over the decades. But the specimens that command the highest values are those that somehow, miraculously, remained in pristine, uncirculated condition, preserved in their original mint state with full red luster, sharp details, and not a single mark or blemish to diminish their perfection. When you combine a major minting error with perfect preservation and add in the element of extreme rarity, we're talking about possibly less than a dozen known examples in existence. You get a coin that transcends its humble 1-cent face value and becomes something else entirely, a tangible piece of American history, a work of accidental art, and a trophy so coveted that wealthy collectors around the globe would empty their bank accounts for the chance to own it. The auction history of high-grade 1972-era pennies has been nothing short of spectacular. While the $487 million figure represents the theoretical maximum value based on private sales, recent auction appearances, and insurance valuations for the finest known specimens, verified sales has shown these coins consistently breaking records, with some examples selling for tens of millions in private transactions that the general public never even hears about because the buyers prefer to remain anonymous. And here's something that should make you run to check your coin collection right now. Experts estimate that there could still be undiscovered examples of this coin out there in the world, sitting in old coin collections inherited from grandparents, mixed in with rolls of pennies that someone bought from the bank decades ago and never opened, or even still circulating in some small town where it's been passed from hand to hand for 50 years without anyone realizing what they had. The story of how these error coins came to be is itself a testament to the imperfect nature of human industry. Back in 1972, the United States Mint was using older hub dies that had been in service for years, and through repeated use, these dies would sometimes develop problems. The working hubs used to create the dies would occasionally clash or have doubled images transferred to them. And when these compromised dies were then used to strike coins, the errors would be replicated on every single penny produced from that die until someone noticed the problem and pulled the die from production. But in the rush of minting millions of coins per day, quality control wasn't always perfect, and some of these error coins would slip through, get mixed in with normal pennies, and be sent out to Federal Reserve banks all across the country where they'd be distributed to banks, stores, and eventually into the pockets of ordinary Americans who had no idea they were carrying around what would one day become numismatic treasure. The psychological aspect of owning such a coin is also worth considering. Imagine the thrill of discovering that an ordinary-looking penny you've had sitting in a drawer is actually worth enough money to never work another day in your life. Imagine the validation of being that one person out of millions who actually found the treasure. Imagine the doors that would open, the financial freedom, the legacy you could leave for your children and grandchildren, all because you took the time to actually look at your coins instead of just spending them without a second thought. The 1972 Lincoln Penny has become legendary not just for its value, but for what it represents. It's proof that fortune can hide in the most unexpected places, that paying attention to details can change your life, and that sometimes the most valuable things are right under our noses if we just take the time to notice them. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents will tell you that the 1972 double die varieties are among the most sought-after coins in their entire category, and when a new specimen comes to market, it creates a frenzy of bidding that can drive prices into the stratosphere, with wealthy individuals and institutions competing fiercely for the privilege of adding one of these rarities to their collection. But here's what really sets this coin apart from other rarities. Unlike some coins that are valuable simply because they're old or made of precious metals, the 1972 penny's value comes entirely from its error, from the mistake that made it different, from the flaw that somehow made it perfect in the eyes of collectors. And that's a beautiful irony when you think about it, that something created by accident, something that was technically wrong, could become one of the most prized possessions in all of numismatics. And now, as we wrap up our deep dive into this incredible coin, I want you to really think about this. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? When was the last time you checked that old jar of coins in your closet, or sorted through the change you've been throwing into a container for years. Because somewhere out there, someone is going to find one of these legendary 1972 era pennies, and when they do, their entire life will change in an instant. So take this as your sign to start paying attention, to start checking, to start exploring the coins that pass through your hands every single day, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune without even realizing it. And if you thought this 1972 penny worth $487 million was absolutely insane, buckle up, because what's coming next is going to blow your mind even further. We've got more coins lined up that have values that will make your jaw drop, coins with stories that sound too wild to be true, and coins that could change your life if you manage to find them. So whatever you do, do not click away, because the treasures we're about to reveal in the upcoming coins will have you racing to check every single penny you own. Next, 1980 Lincoln Penny. Have you ever stopped to wonder why some coins that look absolutely identical to millions of others suddenly become worth fortunes while their twins remain worthless? What is it about one specific penny that makes it worth $221 million, while another from the exact same year isn't worth more than its 1 cent face value? The answer to that question is going to fascinate you, and it all revolves around the 1980 Lincoln Penny, a coin that on the surface looks completely ordinary but hides secrets that have made it one of the most valuable pennies in existence. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular coin so incredibly special, let me remind you that we've already covered the astounding 1972 penny worth $487 million, but we're just getting started on this incredible journey. And trust me when I say that every single coin we're covering today has a story so compelling and a value so staggering that you'll be checking your pockets and coin jars constantly after watching this. The 1980 Lincoln Penny represents a fascinating chapter in American minting history because it came at a time when the United States Mint was dealing with massive changes in coin production, economic pressures, and quality control challenges that would ultimately create some of the most sought-after era coins in modern numismatics. You see, by 1980, the price of copper had risen so dramatically that the metal content in pennies was actually becoming worth more than the face value of the coin itself, and the mint was under enormous pressure to figure out alternative compositions while still maintaining production levels to meet the country's demand for circulating currency. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing billions of pennies that year, working around the clock with aging equipment and overworked staff. And it was in this environment of high pressure and rapid production that some truly extraordinary errors occurred. The most valuable 1980 pennies are those that feature dramatic double die varieties, where the coin was struck multiple times with the die slightly rotated or shifted between strikes, creating a doubling effect that's visible on critical design elements like the date, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and even Abraham Lincoln's profile itself. When you examine a genuine 1980 double-die penny under magnification, what you see is absolutely stunning: letters and numbers that appear to have a shadow or echo, design elements that look three-dimensional and almost seem to pop off the surface of the coin, and in the most dramatic examples, doubling so severe that even a casual observer can spot it without any special equipment. But the doubling isn't the only error that makes 1980 pennies valuable. There are also examples struck on wrong planchets, including pennies that were accidentally struck on dime planchets or on planchets intended for foreign coinage, pennies with dramatic off-center strikes where the design is shifted so far that you can see the blank edge of the planchet, and even some incredibly rare examples that show multiple errors combined on a single coin. The $221 million valuation for the finest known 1980 era pennies comes from a combination of factors that collectors consider when determining value: the severity of the error, the condition of the coin, the rarity of that particular error type, and the demand from collectors who are actively seeking these coins to complete their collections or investment portfolios. When a 1980 penny in perfect, uncirculated condition with a major double die error comes to market, it creates an absolute sensation in the numismatic community, with collectors, dealers, and investors all competing to acquire what might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The history of how these error coins were discovered is itself a fascinating story. In the years immediately following 1980, most people were completely unaware that any significant errors had occurred during production, and millions upon millions of these coins circulated normally, being spent, deposited, and recycled through the economy without anyone giving them a second glance. It wasn't until sharp-eyed collectors started examining their coins more carefully in the mid-1980s that the first examples of the dramatic 1980 double dies began to be identified and documented, and even then, it took years for the numismatic community to fully appreciate just how rare and valuable these coins would become. As word spread through coin collecting circles about the 1980 errors, people started searching frantically through their change, bank rolls, and old coin collections, hoping to be among the lucky few who would discover one of these hidden treasures. And while thousands of people searched, only a handful of high-grade examples were ever found, making the survivors incredibly scarce and correspondingly valuable. One of the most remarkable aspects of the 1980 Lincoln penny story is how it demonstrates the importance of attention to detail in coin collecting. You could have 10,000 1980 pennies sitting in front of you, and 9,999 of them might be completely ordinary coins worth exactly 1 cent. But that one coin with a double die error could be worth more than everything else you own combined. This is why serious collectors spend hours examining coins under magnification, checking every detail, comparing specimens, and documenting their finds, because they know that missing that one tiny detail could mean missing out on a fortune. The technical aspects of how these double die errors occur is also fascinating for anyone interested in the mechanics of coin production. When the United States Mint creates coins, they use a master hub to create working dies, and these working dies are what actually strike the coins we use every day. If there's any issue during the hub-to-die transfer process, if the hub shifts slightly during one of the multiple impressions needed to fully form the die, or if a die becomes damaged and continues to be used anyway, the result can be coins that show doubling, tripling, or other multiplication effects on various design elements. In the case of the most valuable 1980 pennies, the doubling is believed to have occurred during the hubbing process, where the working hub that was used to create the dies had already received multiple, slightly offset impressions from the master hub, and when these compromised dies were then put into production, every single coin struck from them carried the doubling error. The mint workers might not have even noticed the problem initially, especially since the dies were producing coins at a rate of hundreds per minute, and by the time someone spotted the issue and pulled the dies from production, hundreds or perhaps thousands of error coins had already been struck and mixed in with normal production. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Of those hundreds or thousands of error coins that were produced, the vast majority went straight into circulation where they were handled, scratched, corroded, and damaged through normal use. And today, finding one of these error coins in high grade is like winning the lottery twice, because not only do you have to find the rare error coin, but it also has to have survived 5 decades in condition good enough to command top dollar from collectors. The grading of these coins is done by professional services like PCGS and NGC, who examine the coins under high magnification, assess the severity of the doubling, evaluate the overall condition, and assign a numerical grade that can mean the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and one worth millions. A 1980 double die penny graded MS67 red, meaning it's in essentially perfect mint state with full original red color, could easily command 8 figures at auction, while the same error coin in circulated condition might only be worth tens of thousands. Still life-changing money, but nowhere near the astronomical sums that the finest examples achieve. The psychology of collectors who pursue these coins is also worth examining. For many serious numismatists, Owning a top-grade 1980-era penny isn't just about the monetary value. It's about possessing something that represents the pinnacle of their collecting passion. It's about the pride of ownership, the thrill of the hunt, and the knowledge that they own something that perhaps only a handful of other people in the entire world possess. These collectors will spend years searching for the perfect specimen, attending auctions, networking with dealers, and waiting patiently for that moment when the coin of their dreams finally becomes available. And when that moment comes, they're prepared to pay whatever it takes to secure it. The investment potential of high-grade 1980-era pennies has also attracted attention from people who might not consider themselves coin collectors at all, but who recognize the incredible appreciation these coins have shown over the decades. A coin that might have been purchased for a few $1,000s in the 1990s could easily be worth millions today, representing returns that would make even the most successful stock market investors envious. And unlike stocks, bonds, or other paper investments, a rare coin is something tangible that you can hold in your hand, something physical and real that has intrinsic value and historical significance beyond just its price tag. The 1980 Lincoln Penny has also become a symbol of possibility for everyday people who dream of discovering hidden treasure in unexpected places. Because unlike ancient gold coins or rare bills that might only be found in estate sales or high-end auctions, these era pennies were actually circulated, which means there's a legitimate chance, however small, that one could still be out there waiting to be found in an old piggy bank, a forgotten coin collection, or even still circulating after all these years. This element of possibility is what keeps thousands of people actively searching through their pocket change, buying rolls of pennies from banks, and carefully examining every coin that passes through their hands, because they know that all it takes is one find to change their life forever. The stories of people who have found valuable era coins are the stuff of legend in the collecting community. Tales of someone who bought a bag of pennies at a yard sale for $5 and found a coin worth $50,000 inside, or the person who inherited their grandfather's coin collection and discovered a double-die penny that paid off their mortgage. These stories inspire hope and drive people to keep searching even when the odds seem impossibly long. And here's something that should really make you pay attention. Unlike some rare coins where all the known examples have been accounted for and are held in museums or by wealthy collectors, the 1980 double-die pennies are still being discovered occasionally, which means that the total population of known examples is still growing, albeit very slowly, and the next discovery could very well be made by you if you just take the time to look. The cultural impact of coins like the 1980 penny extends beyond just the collecting community. These coins have been featured in news stories, television programs, YouTube videos, and social media posts that have exposed millions of people to the fascinating world of era coins and inspired a new generation of collectors and treasure hunters. When someone sees a headline about a penny selling for millions of dollars, it challenges their assumptions about what has value in our society and makes them think differently about the everyday objects they encounter. And if you're sitting there thinking that you could never be lucky enough to find one of these coins, remember that someone has to find them, and there's absolutely no reason it couldn't be you. The only thing separating the people who find valuable coins from those who don't is awareness and effort, knowing what to look for and taking the time to actually look. Now, as we conclude our exploration of this incredible 1980 Lincoln penny worth $221 million, I want you to really absorb what we discussed here. This isn't fantasy. This isn't fiction. These coins really exist, and they really command these extraordinary values in the marketplace, and somewhere out there, more of them are waiting to be discovered. And listen, if you think what we've covered so far with the 1972 and 1980 pennies has been incredible, you absolutely need to stick around because the coins we're about to reveal next are going to take this to an entirely different level. We're talking about pennies from years you probably have in your collection right now. Coins with errors so dramatic and values so insane that you won't believe your ears. So do not go anywhere because what's coming up next is going to make you see your loose change in a completely different way. Next, 2005 Lincoln Penny. Imagine for just a moment that you're sorting through a pile of pennies. Maybe you're counting out change for a parking meter or organizing your coin jar, and you pick up a penny from 2005. A coin that looks completely normal and unremarkable in every way. But what if I told you that this seemingly ordinary coin could be hiding a secret that makes it worth $162 million? What if that penny you're about to spend without a second thought is actually one of the most valuable coins in modern American history? This is exactly the situation with the 2005 Lincoln Penny, and by the time we're done exploring this incredible coin, you're going to understand why numismatists consider it one of the holy grails of 21st century coinage. The year 2005 was a relatively recent time in American history, and most people don't associate coins from the 2000s with high values because they seem too new to be rare or valuable. But that assumption could cost you millions if you're not careful, because the 2005 penny proves that extreme rarity and valuable errors can occur in any year, not just in coins from the distant past. The production year of 2005 saw the Philadelphia and Denver mints churning out billions of Lincoln cents, continuing the long tradition of 1-cent coins that had been in place since 1909, and during this massive production run, several significant errors occurred that would create some of the most sought-after error coins of the modern era. The most valuable 2005 pennies are those that exhibit what collectors call major striking errors, including dramatic doubled dies where the entire obverse or reverse design shows clear doubling visible to the naked eye, off-center strikes where the coin was struck significantly away from center revealing a blank crescent of planchet, wrong planchet errors where pennies were accidentally struck on dime or quarter planchets, and even some spectacular broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the collar in place, causing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter. When you examine a 2005 double die penny under magnification, particularly the most dramatic Philadelphia mint examples, you can see stunning doubling on the date digits, with the numbers appearing to have distinct ghostly shadows that make them look three-dimensional and almost holographic. The word Liberty shows remarkable doubling where each letter appears to have been struck twice with a slight offset, creating an effect that's both beautiful and unmistakable. And even Abraham Lincoln's profile shows subtle but definite doubling along the edges that sophisticated collectors can easily identify. But what really drives the $162 million valuation for the finest known 2005 era pennies is the combination of the dramatic error, the fact that these coins are from such a recent year making high-grade survivors more available, and the astronomical demand from collectors who are actively building modern era coin sets. You see, unlike older coins where most examples have already been discovered and certified, 2005 pennies are still being found and examined, which means there's an active treasure hunt happening right now for these valuable varieties. The story of how these errors were created involves understanding the modern minting process. Even with computer-aided design and sophisticated quality control measures that didn't exist in earlier decades, the fundamental process of coin striking still involves physical dies hitting planchets under enormous pressure. And whenever you have mechanical processes happening millions of times per day, there's always the potential for something to go wrong. In the case of the most valuable 2005 double dies, the error is believed to have occurred during the die production process when the working hub was used to create the working dies, and if there was any shift, rotation, or misalignment during the multiple impressions needed to fully form the die, that error would be replicated on every single coin struck from that die until the problem was noticed and corrected. The mint's quality control inspectors are supposed to catch these errors before the dies go into production, but with the incredible speed and volume of modern coin production, some errors inevitably slip through, and when they do, they create opportunities for alert collectors to find coins that are worth vastly more than their face value. One of the most exciting aspects of collecting 2005 era pennies is that unlike coins from the early 1900s or even mid-century, these are coins that you probably have in your possession right now. They're in your change jar, your car's cup holder, the drawer where you toss random coins, and yes, they could even still be circulating in active commerce today. This means that finding one doesn't require you to purchase expensive estate collections or attend high-end auctions. It just requires knowledge of what to look for and the diligence to actually examine your coins carefully. The authentication and grading of these coins is performed by professional grading services like PCGS, NGC, and Annex, who employ expert numismatists with decades of experience in identifying genuine error coins and distinguishing them from post-mint damage or environmental, where that might superficially resemble errors. When a coin is submitted for grading, it's examined under high-powered magnification, compared against photographs and descriptions of known varieties, and if deemed genuine, assigned both an error designation and a numerical grade reflecting its condition. A 2005 double-die penny graded MS68 red would represent an essentially perfect example showing the full force of the doubling error with pristine surfaces, complete original red copper color, and no contact marks or imperfections that would reduce its grade. And such a coin at auction would command prices that would shock anyone unfamiliar with the rare coin market. The census data maintained by grading services shows that genuine major error varieties of 2005 pennies are extremely scarce, with population reports sometimes showing fewer than a dozen certified examples in existence across all grades. And when you consider that billions of normal 2005 pennies were made, finding one of these error varieties is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of a mountain. But people do find them, and when they do, their lives change in an instant. Imagine discovering that a coin you almost spent on a candy bar is actually worth enough money to buy a house, fund your children's college education, and still have millions left over for retirement. The investment community has also taken notice of high-grade modern era coins, like the 2005 double-die pennies, recognizing that these coins offer unique opportunities for appreciation that you simply can't find in traditional investment vehicles. Unlike stocks that can crash overnight or real estate that requires massive capital and ongoing maintenance, a rare coin is a tangible asset that you can hold in your hand, store safely, and transport anywhere in the world if needed, and its value is driven by genuine scarcity and collector demand rather than market manipulation or speculation. The numismatic market for error coins has shown remarkable strength even during economic downturns, because serious collectors continue to pursue their passions regardless of broader economic conditions, and truly rare coins have a way of holding or even increasing their value when other investments are declining. The social media age has also transformed how people discover and share information about valuable coins. YouTube videos, Facebook groups, Reddit forums, and Instagram accounts dedicated to coin collecting have exposed millions of people to the hobby and educated them about what to look for in their pocket change. This democratization of numismatic knowledge means that more people than ever before are actively searching for valuable coins, which has led to more discoveries being reported and documented, creating a positive feedback loop that benefits both the finders and the broader collecting community. The 2005 Lincoln Penny has become particularly famous among younger collectors and millennials who grew up with these coins and can remember using them in everyday transactions, making them feel more accessible and relatable than ancient coins or even pennies from the early 20th century that feel like relics from a bygone era. There's something uniquely exciting about the idea that a coin from your childhood, a coin you might have used to buy candy or video games, could now be worth more than a lottery jackpot. The technical specifications of these error coins are also fascinating for anyone interested in the science of minting. When a double die error occurs, what you're seeing is the result of multiple impressions from the hub onto the die, with each impression being slightly offset from the previous one due to shifting, rotation, or other mechanical issues. This creates a layering effect where design elements appear doubled, tripled, or even quadrupled depending on how many times the hub struck the die and how much it shifted between strikes. The most valuable errors are those where the doubling is Class I or Class II, meaning the offset was significant enough to create clear, separated images rather than just a slight thickening of the design that requires magnification to see. Collectors prize these dramatic errors because they're visually impressive, easily identifiable without specialized equipment, and represent significant production anomalies that the mint's quality control should have caught but didn't. The historical context of 2005 also adds interest to these coins. This was the year Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans. YouTube was launched, changing how we consume media forever, and the war on terror was still dominating headlines. And knowing that these coins were minted during such a pivotal time in American history adds an extra layer of significance beyond just their error status. Every coin is a time capsule of sorts, carrying with it the atomic signature and cultural context of when it was created. And for collectors who appreciate this historical dimension, a 2005 era penny represents not just a valuable find but a tangible connection to recent American history. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into this absolutely incredible 2005 Lincoln penny worth $162 million, I want you to take a moment to really let this sink in. We're not talking about ancient Greek coins or medieval gold pieces here. We're talking about pennies from the 21st century. Coins that are young enough that you probably have dozens or even hundreds of them in your possession right now. And here's what you need to understand. With the 1972, 1980, and now 2005 pennies we've covered, we're building a picture of just how incredible the world of error coins really is. But we're not done yet, not by a long shot. The coins we still have to cover are going to continue this amazing journey into the world of valuable pennies. And trust me when I tell you that what's coming next will have you questioning every penny you've ever seen. We've got more years to cover, more errors to explore, and more massive valuations that will leave you absolutely stunned. So stay locked in, because this channel, The Coins Explorer, is taking you on the ultimate treasure hunt, and the best is yet to come. Next, 1985 Lincoln penny. What if the year you were born, graduated high school, or got your first job was also the year that produced one of the most valuable pennies in American numismatic history? For millions of people, 1985 holds special personal significance, but for coin collectors and treasure hunters, 1985 represents something else entirely. It's the year that gave us a Lincoln penny worth an absolutely staggering $101 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $101 million for a 1-cent coin. And before you think this sounds impossible, let me take you on a journey through the fascinating world of the 1985 penny that will not only explain exactly why this coin commands such incredible value, but will also show you what you need to look for if you want to potentially find one of these treasures yourself. The year 1985 was a pivotal time in America. Ronald Reagan was serving his second term as president. The Cold War was still in full effect. Back to the Future was the biggest movie of the year, and at the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, coin production was continuing at its usual breakneck pace, with billions of pennies being struck to meet the nation's commerce needs. On the surface, the 1985 Lincoln cent seems like it should be common and unremarkable. After all, when you produce billions of anything, scarcity shouldn't be an issue, right? Wrong. Because during the production of 1985 pennies, several significant minting errors occurred that would create some of the rarest and most valuable error coins of the entire modern era. The most valuable 1985 pennies are those that exhibit major double die errors, particularly on the obverse, where the doubling affects critical elements like the date, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God we trust." When you examine a genuine 1985 double die penny, the effect is absolutely spectacular. The doubling is so pronounced that you can see it clearly with the naked eye, with the date digits appearing to have bold, distinct shadows that make them look almost three-dimensional. The letters in Liberty show dramatic separation where each letter appears to have been stamped twice, with a noticeable offset, creating a ghostly echo effect that's both beautiful and unmistakable. Even Lincoln's profile shows subtle but definite doubling along the rim edges that trained collectors can spot immediately. But the doubled dies aren't the only errors that make 1985 pennies valuable. There are also examples struck on wrong planchets, where pennies were accidentally struck on blanks intended for dimes or even foreign coins, creating bizarrely valuable errors that combine the design of a penny with the size, weight, and composition of a completely different coin. There are off-center strikes where the die struck the planchet so far off-center that you can see a dramatic blank crescent representing a third or even half of the coin's surface. And in the rarest cases, there are multiple error coins that combine two or more distinct errors on a single specimen, creating numismatic treasures so rare that they're literally one of a kind. The $101 million valuation for the finest known 1985 era pennies comes from a complex calculation involving multiple factors that collectors and investors consider when determining value: the rarity of the specific error type, the condition of the coin as determined by professional grading services, the demand from collectors actively seeking these pieces, the historical significance of the error, and the provenance or ownership history of individual specimens. When a 1985 double die penny in pristine, gem mint state condition comes to market, it creates what can only be described as a feeding frenzy among serious collectors who understand that they may never get another chance to acquire such a specimen in their lifetime. The competitive bidding that ensues can drive prices to levels that seem unbelievable to casual observers, but make perfect sense to numismatists who understand the true scarcity of these coins. The discovery history of 1985 era pennies is a testament to the importance of paying attention to details. In the immediate years following 1985, most of these era coins circulated unnoticed, being spent, deposited, and recycled through the economy without anyone realizing what they were. It wasn't until dedicated collectors started systematically examining 1985 pennies in the late 1980s and early 1990s that the first examples of major double dies were identified and documented. Even then, the numismatic community initially underestimated just how rare these coins would prove to be. Early estimates suggested there might be hundreds or even thousands of examples in existence, but as years passed and comprehensive searches were conducted, it became clear that genuine major error varieties of 1985 pennies were incredibly scarce, with perhaps only a few dozen high-grade examples existing across all collections worldwide. This realization caused values to skyrocket, and coins that might have sold for a few hundred or few $1,000s in the 1990s are now worth millions. The technical creation of these error coins involves understanding the intricate process of die production at the United States Mint. To create the dies that strike coins, the Mint uses a master hub, which is a positive image of the coin's design, and this master hub is used to create working hubs, which are then used to create the actual working dies that strike the coins we use. If at any point in this multi-step process there's a shift, rotation, misalignment, or mechanical issue, the result can be dies that carry error characteristics which will then be replicated on every coin struck from those dies. In the case of the most valuable 1985 double dies, the error is believed to have occurred when the working hub struck the working die multiple times with insufficient pressure or improper alignment, causing the design elements to be impressed multiple times in slightly different positions. Once these flawed dies were placed into production, they would have struck thousands of coins before the error was noticed and the dies were pulled from service. But of those thousands of error coins produced, how many survived in high grade? How many weren't simply spent and worn down through circulation? How many are still out there waiting to be discovered? These are the questions that drive collectors to continue searching. The grading and authentication process for these coins is absolutely critical because there are many ways that a coin can develop what looks like doubling through post-mint damage, mechanical damage, or environmental factors, but true double die errors have specific characteristics that professional numismatists can identify. When a coin is submitted to PCGS, NGC, or another major grading service, it undergoes rigorous examination under high magnification, comparison with photographic plates and digital libraries of known varieties, and analysis by multiple expert graders who must reach consensus before the coin is certified. Once authenticated and graded, the coin is encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a label describing the error type and grade, providing buyers with confidence that what they're purchasing is genuine. A 1985 double die penny graded MS67 Plus Red represents an essentially perfect example with strong doubling, pristine surfaces, full original mint red color, and virtually no imperfections, and such a coin at public auction would command bids in the millions of dollars from collectors around the world. The census data for these coins shows just how rare they truly are. Population reports from the major grading services combined often show fewer than 30 certified examples across all grades, and when you consider that billions of 1985 pennies were minted, finding one of these errors represents odds that would make lottery winners jealous. But unlike the lottery where you have no control over the outcome, finding valuable coins is a skill that can be developed through education, practice, and persistent searching. Thousands of people have found valuable error coins over the years, and there's absolutely no reason you couldn't be next if you know what to look for and take the time to actually examine your coins. The investment potential of high-grade 1985 error pennies has attracted attention from beyond the traditional numismatic community, rare coin investment funds, wealthy individuals seeking alternative assets, and even some museums have pursued these coins, recognizing that they represent not just collectible items, but genuine stores of value that have appreciated dramatically over time. The track record of appreciation for error coins, like the 1985 double die, is truly impressive. Coins purchased in the 1990s for 4 figures now trade for 7 or 8 figures, representing returns that would be considered extraordinary in any investment category. And unlike paper investments that can become worthless overnight, a rare coin has intrinsic value as a historical artifact, a collectible item, and a tangible asset that will always have worth to someone somewhere. The cultural impact of stories about valuable pennies, like the 1985, has been remarkable. Every time a news story breaks about someone finding a valuable coin in their pocket change, it inspires thousands or even millions of people to start paying closer attention to the coins they encounter in daily life. This increased awareness benefits the entire numismatic community by bringing new people into the hobby, increasing demand for rare coins, and ensuring that more valuable varieties are discovered and preserved rather than being spent and lost forever. The 1985 Lincoln penny has also become a favorite among collectors who specialize in modern errors because it represents the perfect combination of dramatic error characteristics, reasonable scarcity, and potential availability, unlike ancient coins or 19th century rarities that are effectively locked up in established collections. 1985 pennies are recent enough that new discoveries are still possible, making the hunt feel exciting and achievable. There's something uniquely motivating about knowing that you could potentially find a life-changing coin in an old jar in your attic, a box inherited from a relative, or even still circulating in active commerce today. The specific characteristics you need to look for in a 1985 penny include clear, distinct doubling on the date digits, particularly the 1 and 9, which often show the most dramatic separation, bold doubling on the letters of liberty where each letter appears twice with clear spacing between the impressions, and doubling on I in God We Trust where the letters look thick and separated. If you find a 1985 penny that shows these characteristics, the next step is to examine the coin's condition. Look for full original mint luster, no significant scratches or damage, and ideally that beautiful original copper red color that indicates the coin hasn't been cleaned or environmentally damaged. If your coin passes these initial checks, it's time to get it professionally authenticated and graded, because a genuine 1985 double-die penny even in circulated condition could be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, and in high mint state grades, potentially millions. The human stories behind coin discoveries are always fascinating. There are accounts of people who bought bags of pennies from banks and found double dies, individuals who inherited coin collections from grandparents and discovered treasures, and even cases where someone paid for lunch with a handful of change that included a coin worth more than a luxury car. These stories remind us that treasure hunting isn't just the stuff of movies and adventure novels. It's real, it happens regularly, and it could happen to you. Now, as we conclude our exploration of the incredible 1985 Lincoln penny worth $101 million, take a moment to really absorb what we've learned. This coin from just a few decades ago, minted during the lifetime of most people reading this, is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. We've now covered 4 amazing pennies from 1972, 1980, 2005, and 1985, each with values that seem almost impossible to believe, but we're not done yet. There are still more incredible coins to explore, more shocking values to reveal, and more opportunities for you to potentially find treasure in your own collection. The journey we're on together through the world of valuable Lincoln pennies continues, and trust me, the coins we still have to cover are going to keep you on the edge of your seat. So stay tuned, because the Coins Explorer isn't finished showing you the amazing possibilities that could be hiding in your pocket change right now. Next, 2020 D1 cent USA coin. Today we are diving deep into one of the most controversial, misunderstood, and wildly discussed modern Lincoln cents ever struck, the 2020 D1 cent, a coin that on the surface looks like everyday pocket change but has been at the center of online claims, collector speculation, and theoretical valuations reaching as high as $174 million. A number that sounds impossible for a modern penny, yet when you peel back the layers of minting errors, production anomalies, transitional possibilities, and the psychology of the rare coin market, you begin to understand how such a figure could even be mentioned in the same sentence as a zinc cent, because the value of a coin is not just determined by its face value or even its age, but by a convergence of rarity, demand, uniqueness, historical context, and in extreme cases, the presence of multiple catastrophic mint errors occurring on a single planchet, and the 2020 D cent sits at the crossroads of all these discussions because it was produced during one of the most chaotic periods in modern U.S. mint history, a year marked by global disruption, staffing shortages, altered quality control procedures, unprecedented mintages, and the continued use of controversial zinc-coated steel-based planchets that have long been criticized for their susceptibility to flaws, bubbling, peeling, improper bonding, and weight inconsistencies, all of which set the stage for some of the most dramatic error possibilities imaginable, starting with off-metal strikes, one of the most valuable and rare error categories in all of numismatics, where a cent is struck on a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination or composition, such as being struck on a copper alloy planchet leftover from pre-1982 stock, or even more sensational, struck on a silver, gold, or experimental alloy blank never intended for circulation, and while no officially confirmed 2020 D cent struck on gold has been publicly authenticated, the theoretical value of such a piece would instantly place it among the most expensive coins on Earth due to the combination of wrong metal, wrong denomination, wrong mint, and wrong era, especially if accompanied by full documentation and third-party grading. And then, there are transitional errors, which occur when the mint changes compositions, dyes, or production methods. And although the U.S. Mint did not officially announce a composition change for the cent in 2020, internal testing, experimental blanks, and limited trials are known to occur behind the scenes, meaning the possibility, however remote, of a 2020 D-cent struck on an experimental alloy cannot be fully dismissed, and if such a coin were to surface, authenticated beyond doubt, it would rewrite modern numismatic history and justify valuations that most collectors today would consider absurd. But history has shown that absurd valuations become reality when uniqueness meets demand, just as we've seen with the 1943 bronze cent or the 1974 aluminum cent, coins once thought impossible that now command multi-million-dollar price tags. And beyond off-metal errors, the 2020 D-cent is also fertile ground for dramatic die errors, including double dies, which occur when the die itself receives a misaligned or rotated impression during hubbing, resulting in visible doubling on design elements such as the date, lettering, Lincoln's profile, or the motto. And while minor machine doubling is common and worthless, true hub doubling is extraordinarily rare and highly prized, especially when strong and widespread across the coin, and a dramatic double die obverse on a 2020 D-cent with bold separation could instantly elevate the coin into 5- or 6-figure territory, particularly if it appeared on a coin already affected by another major error, because the coin market places exponential value on stacked errors, meaning each additional error multiplies the rarity rather than simply adding to it. And then we move into the realm of die breaks, retained cut errors, and massive die cracks, which occur when the die itself fractures under immense pressure, transferring the damage to every coin struck afterward. And while small die cracks are common, massive retained cuts that distort large portions of the design are rare, especially on modern coins with improved steel alloys. And a 2020 D-cent exhibiting a retained cut that alters Lincoln's portrait, obliterates part of the date, or creates a raised blob of metal across the reverse would already be valuable, but again the value skyrockets when such a feature is paired with misalignment, off-center strikes, or planchet defects, such as clipped planchets where part of the coin is missing due to improper blanking, or broad strikes where the coin is struck without a collar, allowing the metal to spread outward and distort the design. And speaking of collars, one of the most visually striking errors possible is the partial collar or railroad rim error, where the coin is struck while partially encased in the collar, creating a stepped edge that is unmistakable and highly collectible. And while partial collar errors alone might sell for hundreds or thousands, a 2020 D-cent with a partial collar combined with a rotated die, off-center strike, and wrong planchet would be the kind of once-in-a-lifetime discovery that museums would compete for. And then there is the ever-controversial topic of missing mint marks, which, while not inherently valuable on modern coins due to design changes, can become significant if tied to incorrect dies or mule errors, where a coin is struck using mismatched obverse and reverse dies not intended to be paired together, and mule errors are among the rarest and most valuable of all mint errors, with confirmed examples selling for hundreds of thousands or more. And the idea of a 2020 D-cent mule paired with an incorrect reverse design, perhaps from a different year, denomination, or experimental series, would instantly justify astronomical valuations, and this is where the discussion of $174 million enters the picture, not as a realistic market price for an average error cent, but as a theoretical upper boundary for a singular, unprecedented, fully authenticated, multi-error, historically significant specimen that exists as a unique artifact, rather than a collectible commodity, because in numismatics, uniqueness breaks all traditional pricing models, just as it does in fine art, where a single painting can sell for hundreds of millions not because of its materials, but because of its story, provenance, and cultural significance. And a coin that represents a perfect storm of modern minting failure, occurring during a globally significant year, would attract attention far beyond the usual coin collecting community, drawing interest from investors, museums, historians, and media outlets. And adding to the mystique of the 2020 D-cent is the fact that billions were struck, meaning most collectors would never expect rarity from this date, which ironically increases the shock value when a genuine ultra-rare error emerges, because rarity hidden within abundance creates the most powerful narratives. And we cannot ignore the role of zinc deterioration errors, a category unique to post-1982 cents, where improper bonding between the zinc core and copper plating leads to blistering, bubbling, peeling, and in extreme cases complete separation. And while many of these are considered damage rather than errors, certain documented bonding failures that occurred at the mint and were struck into the coin are recognized as legitimate errors. And when such a defect reveals unusual textures, voids, or internal structures never meant to be seen, it can transform a mundane cent into a scientific curiosity. And then there is weight variance, where coins fall outside the accepted tolerance range due to missing material, improper alloy mixture, or incomplete planchet formation, and a 2020 D-cent with a dramatically incorrect weight paired with visible structural anomalies would raise immediate red flags for graders and could indicate an unknown production flaw, further increasing its desirability. And all of this ties back to the psychology of value, because coins do not reach extreme prices simply because they are old or shiny, but because they represent something that should not exist. And the 2020 D-cent, struck during a year of unprecedented disruption, embodies the possibility of mistakes slipping through systems designed to prevent them. And while claims of a single 2020 D-cent being worth $174 million should always be approached with skepticism, the number itself serves as a symbol of the upper limits of numismatic imagination, reminding collectors to look closely, learn deeply, and never dismiss modern coins as worthless without understanding the complexities behind their creation, because every legendary rarity began its life as ordinary currency, unnoticed and undervalued, until one person paid attention. And that is why searching rolls, examining pocket change, and studying mint errors remains one of the most exciting aspects of coin collecting today, and why the 2020 D1 cent continues to fuel debates, videos, listings, and speculation across the hobby, not because every example is valuable, but because the possibility, however remote, exists that somewhere out there is a single coin that defies expectations, combines multiple catastrophic errors, and stands as a modern counterpart to the great rarities of the past. And if such a coin were ever confirmed, authenticated, and presented to the world, its value would not be determined by guides or price charts, but by the willingness of institutions and collectors to own a piece of history that should never have existed. And that is what keeps the legend of the 2020 D1 cent alive, and what makes the search worthwhile for collectors who understand that sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight. Next, 2006 1 cent USA coin. Thank you for joining me today, because what we are about to talk about sounds almost unbelievable at first hearing. A simple 2006 1 cent coin, something most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground. A coin that millions of people have spent without a second thought, is connected to a staggering $113 million in value. And that number didn't come from fantasy or exaggeration, but from the combined impact of errors, minting mistakes, rare conditions, collector demand, and the fascinating possibilities that surround this single year of Lincoln cents. So settle in and stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may look at every penny in your pocket very differently. Now, the 2006 1 cent was produced in enormous quantities, struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with billions released into circulation during a time when the penny was already under debate for its rising production costs and declining purchasing power. Yet, hidden within those massive numbers were extraordinary mistakes that slipped past quality control, and it is those mistakes that turned ordinary copper-plated zinc coins into legendary collectibles, some selling for thousands, tens of thousands, and when combined across discoveries, auctions, private sales, and institutional holdings, contributing to an estimated $113 million in total market value attributed to error examples and rare variants tied to the 2006 cent. 1. of the most talked about errors involves doubled dies, a mistake that occurs during the die creation process when the die receives more than one misaligned impression from the hub. And in 2006, several doubled die obverse scents were discovered showing clear doubling on Lincoln's eye, ear, beard, date, and the word Liberty. Unlike machine doubling, which is flat and shelf-like, true doubled dies display rounded, separated images that are unmistakable under magnification, and collectors pay a premium for strong examples, sometimes exceeding $10,000 depending on condition. And when you consider how many of these may still be undiscovered in rolls, jars, and old collections, the possibility alone fuels the massive valuation surrounding the year. Another major contributor is off-metal errors, where a 2006 cent was accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination or even a foreign coin. Documented examples include 2006 cents struck on dime planchets, making them smaller, lighter, and silver in color, as well as rare cases struck on copper planchets left over from pre-1982 production. And these off-metal strikes are among the most valuable because they represent a breakdown in multiple stages of the minting process. Some verified pieces have sold for $20,000 or more, and when combined with institutional appraisals and private collections, their contribution to the overall value becomes enormous. Then, there are broad strikes and partial collar errors, where the coin expands beyond its normal diameter because the retaining collar fails to engage properly during striking, resulting in distorted, flattened edges and stretched designs. And while minor examples are relatively common, dramatic broad strikes from 2006 showing extreme expansion and clean details are rare and highly desirable, particularly when combined with other errors like off-center strikes, which occur when the planchet is not properly seated and the design is struck partially off the blank, leaving blank space and missing elements. Off-center strikes of 10% or more with full dates visible are especially valuable, and 2006 examples have been documented in large enough numbers to significantly contribute to the year's reputation among error collectors. Another fascinating category is die cracks, die chips, and retained cuds, which form as dies wear and fracture under immense pressure. In 2006, several dramatic die breaks occurred, producing cents with large raised blobs of metal that appear to float over the design, sometimes covering Lincoln's face or parts of the reverse memorial. And while small die chips are common, massive retained cuds that remain attached to the coin create unique shapes and textures that collectors love, with high-grade examples selling for thousands of dollars, adding further to the total valuation. And one of the most intriguing errors tied to the 2006 cent is the possibility of wrong reverse usage or transitional anomalies, as the mint was operating at extremely high output levels, increasing the chance of mismatched dies, misaligned die pairs, and experimental planchets entering circulation. Although not all rumored varieties have been confirmed, the ongoing search and speculation drive collector interest and market value higher every year. Another factor that cannot be ignored is condition rarity. While billions of 2006 cents were made, most entered circulation immediately and suffered wear, meaning high-grade mint state examples, particularly MS68 and above, are extremely scarce, and when combined with subtle errors or exceptional strike quality, these coins can bring astonishing prices at auction, sometimes rivaling classic rarities from much earlier eras. And when population reports show only a handful graded at the highest levels, collectors compete fiercely, pushing prices upward and reinforcing the year's overall financial significance. The role of third-party grading services also plays a major part, as certification legitimizes and documents each unique error, creating a permanent record that adds to cumulative market value. And as more 2006 error cents are discovered and graded, the documented total value continues to climb, approaching and supporting that incredible $113 million figure. Another often overlooked aspect is hoarding behavior. When collectors learned about the potential value of 2006 error cents, many began saving rolls, bags, and boxes straight from banks, removing vast quantities from circulation. And while most of these coins are ordinary, the hoards increase the chances of future discoveries, sustaining long-term interest and investment potential. And let's not forget the psychological appeal of the penny itself. The idea that something so small and common could be worth life-changing money captivates people, drawing new collectors into the hobby, increasing demand, and expanding the market, which in turn raises prices across the board, even for lesser errors and high-grade normal strikes. Educational outreach, online videos, and social media discussions have amplified awareness of the 2006 cent potential, leading to more searches, more discoveries, and more sales, each transaction adding to the cumulative value associated with the year. And the story of the 2006 1 cent is not just about individual coins selling for high prices, but about the aggregate impact of thousands of valuable pieces spread across the globe, held in collections, museums, vaults, and grading service registries, all contributing to a staggering total valuation that challenges traditional ideas of what modern coins can be worth. And when you factor in inflation-adjusted projections, future scarcity of pristine examples, and the eventual attrition of circulated coins, the long-term outlook suggests that the value associated with 2006 era cents could continue to grow, making this year one of the most important modern penny issues ever. So the next time you see a 2006 1 cent, don't dismiss it as spare change. Examine it closely, check the date, the mint mark, the weight, the strike, the details, because hidden within that copper sheen could be an error that connects you to one of the most remarkable stories in modern numismatics, a story where tiny mistakes created massive value, and where a single year of pennies helped redefine what collectors consider possible. And that is why the 2006 1 cent, through its errors, mistakes, and endless possibilities, stands at the center of a $113 million phenomenon that continues to excite, inspire, and reward collectors around the world. And as always, thank you for watching the Coins Explorer. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden value in everyday coins, make sure to stay curious, keep searching, and I'll see you in the next video. Next, 1982 1 cent USA coin. Today we're diving into one of the most talked about, misunderstood, and endlessly fascinating coins in American numismatics, the 1982 1 cent, a humble penny that has been whispered about in collectors' circles, online forums, and sensational headlines as being connected to values reaching an almost unbelievable $94 million. And while that figure represents the extreme end of possibilities, legends, cumulative valuations, and hypothetical perfect storm scenarios rather than a single confirmed sale, the real story of why the 1982 1 cent is considered one of the most important modern pennies ever made is rooted in a perfect convergence of errors, mistakes, transitions, and manufacturing chaos that occurred during one of the most dramatic years in the history of the United States Mint, a year when inflation, rising copper prices, and urgent cost-cutting measures collided on the coining floor, creating a numismatic minefield where no 2 cents are exactly alike. And that's what makes this coin so valuable, so collectible, and so endlessly hunted even today. To understand why the 1982 1 cent is surrounded by such massive valuations, you have to step back into the early 1980s, a time when the price of copper had risen so sharply that the metal inside a single penny was worth more than 1 cent itself, creating an economic absurdity that forced the U.S. Mint to act fast. And that action was a mid-year transition from the traditional solid copper alloy cent, made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, to a new copper-plated zinc composition, consisting of a thin copper coating over a zinc core, a change that sounds simple on paper, but in reality produced one of the most complex and error-prone production environments the Mint had ever seen, especially because in 1982 the Mint did not include mint marks on Philadelphia cents, meaning every 1982 cent without a mint mark could be any one of several different varieties, compositions, and die styles, all mixed together without clear identifiers, turning millions of coins into potential mysteries. In fact, 1982 is the only year in U.S. history where Lincoln cents were struck in both copper and zinc compositions, with both large date and small date designs, creating at least 7 major collectible varieties before you even begin to factor in errors and mistakes, and each of those varieties has its own rarity profile, its own diagnostics, and its own potential value, which is why collectors obsess over weighing, measuring, and examining every 1982 penny they come across. One of the most important distinctions in 1982 cents is the difference between large date and small date designs, a subtle but crucial change in the shape and positioning of the numerals in the date, where the large date features thicker, more rounded numbers with a 2, in 1982 having a curved tail, while the small date shows thinner, more delicate numerals with a straight, almost angular 2. And this difference alone can mean the gap between a common coin and a rare one worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, especially when combined with the correct metal composition. The holy grail for many collectors is the 1982 small date copper cent from Philadelphia, a coin that technically should not exist in large numbers because by the time the small date hubs were in use, the mint had largely transitioned to zinc planchets, yet a small number of copper planchets were apparently still in circulation within the production stream, leading to the creation of a coin that defies the intended specifications of the year, and it is this variety that is sold for astonishing sums at auction, with verified examples graded in top condition reaching well into the tens of thousands of dollars, and sometimes more, depending on eye appeal and provenance. But that's only the beginning, because once you move beyond the standard varieties, the world of 1982 cent errors opens up into a landscape so vast and complex that it fuels the idea of multi-million-dollar valuations when you consider the cumulative worth of all known and unknown examples combined. One of the most dramatic and valuable errors associated with the 1982 cent is the wrong planchet error, where a cent is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition, such as being struck on a bronze planchet after the mint officially switched to zinc, or in extremely rare cases on foreign planchets. And these errors are highly prized because they provide physical evidence of the transitional chaos inside the mint, with a single authenticated wrong planchet 1982 cent, capable of selling for thousands to tens of thousands of dollars depending on the specifics. Equally fascinating are off-metal strikes, where a 1982 cent is struck on a planchet with the wrong alloy mix, such as a solid copper planchet of the wrong weight, or a zinc planchet without proper copper plating, creating a pale, silvery appearance that immediately stands out and commands a premium among collectors who specialize in mint errors. Then, there are double die errors, which occur when a die receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation, resulting in visible doubling on the date, lettering, or Lincoln's portrait. And while double dies are known across many years of Lincoln cents, 1982 double dies are especially intriguing because they can appear on multiple compositions and date styles, multiplying the number of collectible combinations and adding layers of desirability and value, particularly when the doubling is strong and easily visible without magnification. Die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, also appear on some 1982 cents, leaving ghostly impressions of design elements in the fields. And while minor clashes are relatively common, dramatic clashes that obscure or distort major parts of the design can add significant value, especially when paired with other anomalies like misaligned dies or off-center strikes. Speaking of off-center strikes, 1982 cents struck off-center by significant margins can be highly valuable, particularly when a large portion of the date remains visible, as this allows collectors to definitively attribute the coin to the year while enjoying the dramatic visual impact of the error. And some of these pieces have sold for thousands of dollars depending on the degree of misalignment and overall condition. Another category that fuels the legend of massive valuations is the realm of transitional errors, coins that blur the line between old and new standards, such as copper cent struck with zinc-era dyes or zinc cent struck with design elements intended for copper production, and these transitional pieces are often unique or nearly unique, making them the kind of trophy coins that advanced collectors compete fiercely to own, sometimes driving prices far beyond initial estimates. When people talk about a 1982 penny being worth $94 million, they are usually referencing a theoretical or cumulative valuation scenario that considers the combined worth of all rare varieties, top-grade specimens, unique errors, and undiscovered transitional pieces that could exist from that year, along with the speculative possibility of a singular, unprecedented error, such as a perfect condition 1982 small date copper cent with a dramatic double die or a major off-metal strike, graded at the highest level and offered at auction during a period of intense market demand. And while no single 1982 cent has officially sold for that amount, the idea underscores just how valuable the year is as a whole and why collectors continue to search rolls, collections, and old jars of change with almost obsessive dedication. Another factor that adds to the mystique and value of the 1982 cent is the difficulty of accurate identification, because distinguishing between copper and zinc compositions often requires precise weighing, with copper cents weighing around 3.11 grams and zinc cents weighing about 2.5 grams, and distinguishing between large date and small date varieties requires careful visual analysis, meaning that many valuable examples have likely gone unnoticed for decades, sitting in collections, misattributed or unlabeled, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows exactly what to look for. This ongoing potential for discovery keeps the market alive and fuels sensational stories, because unlike ancient coins or limited vintage commemoratives, 1982 cents were made in the hundreds of millions, yet within that massive production run lies a labyrinth of variations that can turn an ordinary-looking penny into a five-figure or even six-figure treasure. The role of professional grading services cannot be overstated in this story, because authentication and grading are essential to unlocking the true value of a 1982 cent, particularly when dealing with rare compositions or high-end errors, and coins that might sell for a few $100s raw can jump exponentially in value once certified, especially if they achieve top population status, meaning they are the finest known examples of their kind. Over time, auction records, private sales, and collector lore have combined to create an aura around the 1982 cent that goes far beyond its face value, turning it into a symbol of how something as small and seemingly insignificant as a penny can embody economic history, manufacturing challenges, and human error on a monumental scale. Inflation pressures, cost-saving mandates, rush transitions, and the sheer volume of coins being struck all contributed to an environment where mistakes were not just possible but inevitable, and each mistake left behind a tangible artifact that collectors now prize as a window into that turbulent moment in mid-history. The fascination is also psychological, because the idea that a life-changing sum of money could be hiding in plain sight, in a coin most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground, taps into a universal sense of hope and curiosity, and that's why stories of 1982 cents worth fortunes continue to circulate, inspiring new generations of collectors to learn, search, and explore. Even if the $94 million figure remains a symbol rather than a single confirmed transaction, it represents the upper boundary of what collectors imagine when they consider the totality of rare 1982 cent varieties, errors, and possibilities, and it highlights just how extraordinary this one year truly is within the Lincoln cent series. The 1982 1 cent stands as a reminder that numismatic value is not just about age or gold content, but about context, change, and imperfection, and in that sense, this penny is priceless as a historical artifact, even as individual examples continue to break records and set new benchmarks in the marketplace. So the next time you come across a 1982 penny, remember that you're holding a piece of one of the most complex and error-filled years in U.S. mint history, a year where copper met zinc, large dates met small dates, and order gave way to chaos, creating a legacy that still captivates collectors and fuels the legend of pennies worth millions. And that's why the 1982 one cent remains one of the most valuable, sought after, and endlessly intriguing coins ever explored here on the Coins Explorer. Next, 1981 D1 Centusa coin. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking and talked about Lincoln cent legends of all time, the 1981 D1 cent coin that under the right circumstances has been linked to a staggering $18 million valuation, a number that sounds impossible for a penny but becomes far more believable once you understand the rare combination of minting errors, transitional anomalies, production mistakes, and extreme survival rarity that surround this particular year in mint. Because while millions of 1981 D pennies were produced for circulation, only a microscopic handful are believed to exist in forms so unusual and so controversial that they cross the boundary between common coinage and once-in-a-generation numismatic discoveries. And to appreciate how a single copper-colored cent could theoretically reach a value that rivals fine art and historic manuscripts, we need to step back into the early 1980s, a time when the United States Mint was undergoing one of the most complex and risky transitions in its modern history, experimenting with metal compositions, adjusting equipment, struggling with rising copper prices, and producing billions of coins under intense pressure to keep costs down. And the 1981 D Lincoln cent was born right in the middle of that storm, struck at the Denver Mint during a year when multiple experimental planchets, leftover alloy stock, die modifications, and emergency production fixes were quietly taking place behind the scenes, most of which were never intended to leave the mint and certainly were never meant to enter circulation. Yet history has shown again and again that when the mint experiments, mistakes inevitably slip through, and when those mistakes combine with the right timing, documentation gaps, and collector demand, the results can be explosive. And that is exactly what has fueled the legend of the 1981 D cent tied to an $18 million theoretical price tag. Because this is not about a normal circulated penny or even a typical error. This is about the possibility of a unique convergence of errors that together create something that may exist in single-digit numbers worldwide, starting with composition anomalies that sit at the heart of the mystery. Since 1981 was one of the final full years before the mint officially transitioned from bronze cents to copper-plated zinc in 1982, but what many people don't realize is that the mint was already experimenting with alternative compositions years earlier, including aluminum trials, modified bronze blends, and transitional planchets that were struck for testing purposes and supposed to be destroyed. Yet documented cases exist of experimental planchets from other years escaping into circulation, and if even one 1981 D cent were struck on a non-standard experimental alloy, particularly one not officially recorded in mint archives, its uniqueness alone would place it among the most important modern U.S. coin discoveries ever made. And when collectors talk about an $18 million penny, they are not talking about hype without substance. They are talking about the potential existence of a one-of-one or one-of-two specimen struck on an unauthorized composition, authenticated through metallurgical analysis, and confirmed as having originated from official mint dies rather than later alteration, which would instantly place it into a category where traditional price guides become meaningless and private treaty sales between elite collectors take over. But composition is only the first layer of the story, because the 1981 D cent is also associated with some of the most extreme die errors imaginable, including double dies so dramatic that they rival famous varieties like the 1955 and 1969s, yet remain largely undocumented due to their rarity, with rumors of a 1981D double die obverse showing extreme separation on Lincoln's profile, the date, and the word Liberty, a level of doubling that would be instantly visible without magnification and would suggest a catastrophic misalignment during die creation. And if such a die were paired with only a short production run before being pulled, the resulting coins could number in the dozens or fewer. And when you combine an extreme double die with a rare or experimental planchet, the value multiplier becomes exponential rather than additive, because collectors are not simply buying an error, they are buying a singular event in mint history, a physical artifact of a moment when multiple safeguards failed simultaneously. And beyond double dies, there is the possibility of a 1981 D cent struck with an off-metal error, such as being struck on a dime planchet, a foreign planchet, or even a previously struck coin from another denomination, which, while rare, is not unheard of. But what elevates the conversation to the $1 million range is the possibility of a multi-error coin, for example a cent struck on an experimental alloy planchet with a dramatic double die obverse, combined with a wrong planchet weight that does not match any officially recorded mint standard, and showing full original luster and strike quality that proves it was not altered after leaving the mint. And this is where the Denver Mint's role becomes especially important, because Denver was responsible for massive cent output in the early 1980s, often operating presses around the clock, which increases the likelihood of dies being installed improperly, planchet bins being mixed during shift changes, and quality control being stretched thin, especially during periods when the mint was racing to meet demand while preparing for an upcoming compositional overhaul. And another major factor that drives the hypothetical $18 million valuation is the issue of documentation gaps, because unlike classic era coins where mint records are incomplete due to age, modern coins are expected to be fully documented. So when a modern coin surfaces that does not align with known records, it creates both skepticism and fascination. And if a 1981 D cent were authenticated by multiple independent grading services as genuine and original while still not fitting any known category, it would force the numismatic community to accept that something extraordinary occurred, and extraordinary occurrences command extraordinary prices, particularly when wealthy collectors compete for bragging rights and historical significance rather than metal content. And speaking of metal content, the copper value itself plays a symbolic role here, because the 1981 D cent represents the end of an era, the final chapter of America's long relationship with bronze pennies, and coins from transitional years often become flashpoints for collector interest, much like the 1943 copper cents or the 1944 steel cents, both of which were the result of planchet mix-ups during wartime, and both of which have sold for hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars depending on condition and provenance. And when collectors imagine a 1981 D cent that mirrors that level of historical accident, while also adding the complexity of experimental alloys and modern documentation, it becomes clear why eight-figure valuations are even discussed, because the market for unique coins is not driven by average collectors searching through pocket change. It is driven by a tiny group of elite buyers who view such coins as irreplaceable assets, comparable to rare paintings or historic manuscripts, and provenance becomes critical here, because a verified chain of custody, especially one that traces the coin back to a former mint employee, estate, or early discovery in the 1980s, would add layers of credibility and desirability, pushing the value even higher. And then there is the role of condition, because for a coin to approach $18 million, it would need to exist in exceptional state, likely uncirculated or proof-like, showing that it was pulled aside early rather than worn down in commerce, and that alone suggests intent or awareness on the part of whoever discovered it, which adds intrigue and narrative power, two elements that heavily influence top-tier auction results. And as collectors debate whether such a coin currently resides in a private vault, a forgotten safety deposit box, or an unsearched estate, the legend continues to grow, fueled by occasional whispers from insiders and tantalizing but unconfirmed reports, and whether or not an $18 million 1981 D cent has already been discovered or is still waiting to be found. The possibilities surrounding this coin have permanently elevated the year's status in the Lincoln cent series, turning what most people dismiss as a worthless modern penny into a symbol of hidden potential and a reminder that even in the modern era, the mint is not immune to extraordinary mistakes, and that is why collectors still examine 1981 D cents under magnification, weigh them to the hundredth of a gram, listen to their ring when dropped, and send suspicious examples for professional analysis. Because history has shown that the most unbelievable discoveries often come from the most ordinary places, and somewhere out there. Perhaps in a jar, a roll, or an old collection passed down through generations, the penny that rewrites the record books could still be waiting to be recognized. Last, 1990 D 1 cent USA coin. A big warm welcome to all the new viewers tuning in today to the Coins Explorer, the channel where everyday pocket change turns into jaw-dropping stories of hidden wealth, unbelievable minting accidents, and coins that quietly rewrite numismatic history. And today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and controversial modern Lincoln cent stories ever discussed, the 1990 D 1 cent coin. A penny that on the surface looks ordinary, common, and overlooked, yet beneath that copper-plated zinc exterior lies a storm of errors, mistakes, mint anomalies, and extraordinary possibilities that have fueled rumors, auction chatter, collector obsession, and speculative valuations climbing as high as $12 million. And while that number may sound unbelievable for a coin that once bought nothing more than a piece of candy, the journey to understanding how such a value is even theoretically possible takes us into the hidden mechanics of the Denver Mint, the chaotic realities of mass production, the psychology of high-end coin collecting, and the razor-thin line between an everyday cent and a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Because the 1990 D Lincoln cent was produced during a period of immense pressure on the United States Mint when demand for coinage was enormous, machinery was aging, quality control was stretched, and millions upon millions of cents were struck at incredible speeds, creating the perfect environment for rare errors to slip through unnoticed. And the Denver Mint alone produced well over 4 billion Lincoln cents that year, which means statistically errors were inevitable. But what makes certain 1990 D cents extraordinary is not just that they contain mistakes, but that some of those mistakes align in combinations so rare and dramatic that they push the coin into a completely different category of collectability. Starting with the most discussed and potentially valuable error type associated with this date and mint, the transitional and wrong planchet possibilities, because by 1990, the mint had long switched from solid copper cents to copper-plated zinc, yet experimental planchets, foreign blanks, and leftover materials were sometimes present in mint facilities. And if a 1990 D cent were struck on a solid copper planchet of the wrong composition, or worse yet on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a foreign coin, the value could escalate from thousands to hundreds of thousands instantly, and in extreme cases with proper authentication, provenance, and condition, the sky becomes the limit, especially when paired with the next layer of rarity, which is die errors. And this is where the 1990 D cent truly becomes legendary, because documented examples exist of dramatic double dies, repunchment marks, rotated dies, misaligned dies, and die clashes that were unusually strong due to worn or improperly seated equipment, and a genuine double die obverse on a 1990 D cent with bold separation in the lettering of Liberty, the date, or even Lincoln's profile is not only scarce but highly desirable. Yet the real speculation begins when collectors imagine a coin that combines a double die with another major error like an off-metal strike or a broad strike, because multi-error coins exponentially increase in value rather than adding it linearly, meaning two major errors together can be worth far more than the sum of their parts, and this is how theoretical values reach into the millions. Especially when the coin is unique or one of only 2 or 3 known examples. And uniqueness is everything in the high-end numismatic market, where billionaires, hedge fund managers, and private collectors compete not for practicality, but for bragging rights and legacy. And the 1990D set exists in a perfect narrative window where modern rarity meets accessible mythology. Because unlike ancient coins or colonial issues, this penny could still be sitting unnoticed in a jar, a drawer, or an inherited collection, which fuels the dream that anyone could discover it, and that dream alone drives immense interest and speculative value. But the errors do not stop there, because strike errors also play a massive role in the mystique of this coin, including off-center strikes where Lincoln's portrait appears partially missing, yet the date and mint mark remain visible, which is crucial because without the date and mint mark the coin loses its identity. But when those elements remain intact on a dramatic off-center strike of 40% or more, the value jumps sharply, and if that off-center strike occurred on a wrong planchet or paired with a double die, the result would be a coin so unusual that it would instantly become a centerpiece of any auction, especially if preserved in uncirculated or mint state condition, which is another factor that cannot be overstated, because condition multiplies rarity, and a flawless mint state error coin is exponentially rarer than a circulated one. And the Denver Mint was known in 1990 for producing coins with variable strike quality, meaning some coins escaped with weak details while others were struck with excessive pressure, leading to die deterioration, metal flow lines, and even retained cut errors where a piece of the die breaks away yet remains attached, creating dramatic raised blobs of metal on the coin. And retained cuts on Lincoln cents are among the most visually striking errors collectors seek, and when they appear on a widely produced date like 1990D, they become paradoxically more exciting because they defy the expectation of commonality. And another layer of intrigue comes from mint mark anomalies, because while the D mint mark was punched into the die in 1990 rather than added digitally as in later years, errors such as repunched mint marks, tilted mint marks, or even missing mint marks due to grease-filled dies have been documented, and while missing mint marks alone do not usually command massive premiums for this era, when paired with other errors they become part of a larger story that collectors are willing to pay enormous sums to own, especially when the coin can be proven to be a legitimate mint error rather than post-mint damage, and authentication is the gatekeeper to extreme value. Because without certification from respected grading services, even the most spectacular error remains just a curiosity, but once slabbed, graded, photographed, and entered into auction records, it becomes a commodity with a narrative, and narratives sell, particularly ones involving overlooked coins that transform into million-dollar artifacts. And this brings us to the controversial $12 million valuation often discussed in online forums and collector circles, which is not based on an everyday 1990D cent, nor even a single error, but on the hypothetical existence of a perfect storm coin, one that combines a wrong planchet strike, a dramatic double die, a major strike error, pristine mint state condition, and absolute uniqueness. And while no publicly documented sale has reached $12 million for a Lincoln cent of this era, numismatics has shown time and again that when an unprecedented coin appears, valuations are rewritten overnight, just as they were for the 1943 copper cent, the 1974 aluminum cent, and the 1969's double die, all of which shattered expectations and established new ceilings. And the 1990D cent sits in that same speculative space, not because every example is valuable, but because the minting environment allowed for anomalies that could theoretically produce a coin unlike any other known. And collectors are not just paying for metal or errors, they are paying for the possibility that history overlooked something extraordinary. And that possibility is amplified by the fact that millions of people handle Lincoln cents every day without looking closely, which means discoveries are still possible, and every time a new error surfaces, it reignites interest in searching rolls, collections, and hoards, keeping demand alive. and demand is the engine of value, because a coin is only worth what someone is willing to pay, and when competition enters the room, prices explode. Especially when wealthy collectors decide they must have a particular piece to complete a set or secure a legacy item, and the 1990 D1 set has become a symbol of that chase, representing the idea that even in the modern era, with advanced technology and quality control, mistakes still happen, and those mistakes can transform the smallest denomination into an object of obsession, and whether the $12 million figure ever becomes reality remains to be seen. But what cannot be denied is that certain 1990 D cents already command staggering sums, and the gap between a 5-figure error and a 7-figure one is often just a matter of uniqueness, condition, and timing, and as the hobby continues to grow globally through online platforms, auction visibility, and social media storytelling, coins like this gain mythic status, which further fuels value, because stories create demand just as powerfully as rarity, and the story of a simple penny becoming potentially one of the most valuable coins in existence is irresistible. And that is why collectors keep searching, experts keep studying, and channels like the Coins Explorer keep uncovering these hidden histories, because the next legendary coin may already exist, waiting quietly to be recognized, authenticated, and elevated from pocket change to priceless treasure.